Okay, and we are going live. Here we are. I think we're at the ZAM gallery launch here in the metaverse somewhere. We're going to be
Hi,
looking at
Alex.
some crypto art today, which is pretty exciting. And we're doing it in conversation with the man himself, ZAM, who is an artist in
Hi.
Australia who's had good morning, ZAM. How are you?
Hi, I'm great. I could do with a little more coffee, but whatever. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Let's just jump in, shall we? So,
Yeah, why not?
all right. Do you want to just give everyone like a little bit of background on what NFTs are, what crypto art kind of is, before we just walk into the gallery, and just give a bit of background for anyone who doesn't know?
Oh, that's not fair. That's two questions first off the bat. So, I mean, I'm not the most technical kind of person, and uh, I guess with crypto art and NFTs as creatives, we're really expected to jump ahead and really be technological. I'm still learning, like 8 months in. So to describe I mean, how would you describe it? Like essentially, uh, people would say, oh, it's a piece of digital art. You can just like right click, download. What does that mean? Why does it matter? And the thing is that with the blockchain, it means that the provenance is all there for people to see. Only one person can own it. It's not interchangeable, any of that information. You can't alter it, and it's all there. I always thought the blockchain was very mysterious sounding, and that it was kind of like this thing floating in like a starry space in the universe somewhere, and it was kind of these gold like shipping containers, and every time a block was added, like a shipping container would be added to this floating stack in the sky, and that's how it kind of looked in my head. But in reality, it's very simple. It is literally an online ledger of information, like of transactions. It's quite disappointing, actually, quite boring.
Quite
It's
prosaic,
just a
isn't it?
list of
Really? Yeah.
transactions. Exactly, that anybody can access anywhere and see. And it's like, it's accounting, really, I guess, in a way. So the artwork is always attached to that list of transactions, which should be linked. So there's no argument about provenance anymore, and that's going to be very annoying for a lot of people. Like there'll be no more of this, like the Wildenstein family actually rewriting art history just because they have the money to do it, and nobody can argue with them. It's completely unarguable now. So that's the benefit of it, is that only one person can own the image, and you can see who made it, when they made it, who bought it, how much for. It's a real boon for artists working digitally like me, who have really struggled for a really long time trying to control provenance, ownership, that sort of thing. Like for somebody who's been making digital art for over a decade, and also been in publishing and licensing, it is, once something's online, and a million people have said this, it's very, very difficult to control it. Anybody can take it, and I've had numerous problems over the years with people just taking my work and publishing it, and there's nothing you can damn do about it. I think last year, between, I'd say, June and August, I think alone, I lodged over 250 copyright claims against people stealing my work. And then all of a
Yeah.
sudden,
Wow.
crypto art came into the picture, and I was like, brilliant, it's solved. Sort of, like, for the most part, yeah. A lot of the problems are solved with this. So, yeah.
That's
That
really
didn't
interesting,
really
actually.
answer
Like,
your question at all, did you? Did it?
look, I think it did. I think one of the main things you talked about there was people have this stumbling block of, well, if I can just right click save the image, then what's the point? But I guess, like
Mm-hmm.
for me, the real switch point for what blockchain and cryptocurrency and by extension NFTs allow you to do is, we had that whole right click save with MP3s, right? It was just, we can
Yeah.
endlessly replicate this file. It's lossless, once we'd figured out the compression and everything else. And basically, no one, everyone has the same version, and the artist kind of
Mm.
has their work stolen. But the point being here, you can't then resell that MP3 to anybody else. So
No.
there's
And
a
I
really
think what
interesting
we,
psychological thing that happens with artists, isn't it? And art and creativity, where once an ownership takes place, then the piece suddenly has value. because there's this now relationship between the creator and the owner and a market.
Yeah. And getting that control back is a really beautiful, empowering thing. I mean, I'm not going to lie, I really enjoy it. But the other thing that people don't kind of like, I don't know how, like a lot of people's ability is to look into the future and see where this is going. And you need to be able to do that and strategize. I'm going to be talking a lot about strategizing. If you look into the future, you can see like all the applications that the blockchain is going to have coming up really, really soon. And it's already kind of started happening. But back when I started a few months ago, I immediately saw that this was going to be used for MP3s. It was going to start being used by corps within a couple of years to control music files, movie, film files. And then we're going to see, like, there's going to be no more problems of this nonsense with the elections in the US, because ballots will be on the blockchain as well. So it's going to kind of infiltrate several aspects of our lives. And at the moment, it's exciting. It could get a bit Handmaid's Tale and kind of scary in the wrong hands, and it probably will go that way eventually. But at the moment, it's a very exciting time to have come in and be in it.
Yeah, I think, and time is really something worth mentioning here, because I think, a day in crypto is like a month in real world time. Things move so quickly. And I think any of us who are involved in this really suffer from a lack of sleep and just information overload.
Well, for the first couple of months, yes, it's very overwhelming to begin with. I mean, my mind was just like completely blown for a couple of months. I was like, I've been making 100%. Digital art for a decade, and how did I not know about this? And we'll get into how I was actually introduced to crypto art and NFTs later on, I guess. But I was just absolutely blown away. And there's also so much to learn. It's like, if you're not a person who is good with numbers, enjoys accounting and maths, which I have to admit I do a little. I'm such a nerd. I love making lists of things and kind of doing calculations. So there's like all this stuff to learn about, like currencies, trading, just so many aspects to it. And you need to know all this stuff, and you need to know it damn fast. You need to learn so fast. I mean, it's exhausting. It was exhausting. It's like by February, I was kind of exhausted for the month. So you have to have a few days off in between every now and then and just regroup. That doesn't happen.
We just had a question come in from Daniel asking, how does crypto stop copyright infringement? And hi to everyone who's joined us. We've got Jim, we've got GT, we've got Nirabon,
hi,
Dan,
Jim.
a few other people.
Hi, GT.
So Dan wants to know, how does crypto stop copyright infringement? Just before we jump into the gallery, do you want to talk to that?
Well, it stops copyright infringement as far as the crypto art realm and platforms, mostly, not always. We'll probably touch on that later. But you can't stop anybody from like actually printing a physical version of it if they want to do that. But it just holds no value, as we've just talked about. So it can't be traded, and there's nothing you can really do with it except hang it on the wall. The copyrights for these sort of things, and I think a lot of people don't really understand a lot about copyright and fine art or even publishing. And it's kind of hard to explain to people, even people who are sort of quite smart and knowledgeable, how it works. But basically in the digital art realm, the same copyrights stand that they do in the fine art world. So if somebody purchases your work, they can print a copy out for themselves for personal enjoyment, but they can't kind of republish it or only for personal use. So you retain all the copyright as the creator, basically.
Interesting. For me, I think I've got this theory that the blockchain is capitalism on steroids. It's basically everything can be tokenized, everything will be tokenized, but that actually might be capitalism's final form, and that might actually be where it's useful to humanity, rather than this kind of capitalism meets socialism mishmash that doesn't quite work, where a corruption is really rampant. I feel like if we just go full-blown capitalism, I think that's at least the experiment for blockchain as far as I can tell, especially something like Ethereum, where everything can be tokenized and traded. Everything has a value to someone somewhere. And it's kind of a really interesting experiment, hey?
Yes, I think it's human nature to kind of want to see the good in everything. And always, I mean, hope's an inherent human nature, so we all hope that things will be used for good. But unfortunately, that's, as we know, that's pretty much usually not how it works out. Sorry to be a Debbie Downer about it. Like, I just can't see how wrong it could go, you know.
Oh,
in the wrong
absolutely.
hands.
Absolutely.
So,
but I like that there's no one in charge. I think that's the good thing. There's game theory and there's this idea of decentralization, which is really interesting.
Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of people trying really hard to insert themselves in it. I mean, good luck with that. You know, there's the fine art world really want to jump in, and I think, again, in the right hands, if it's coming from outside and there's like a sort of level of equilibrium and willingness to bridge those worlds, it's fine. But then there's a lot of people who are just trying to come in and take advantage. I mean, you see that sort of like on Instagram, let me show you 10 tips of how to be successful. And there's all these kind of, you know, that crap. And there's all these sort of people trying to infiltrate into the crypto art scene and try and do that sort of nonsense of how to tell you how to make it. There's no rules, and there's no, like, I know a lot of people have said, you know, we're pioneers. Yeah, it's totally the Wild West, and it's early days, and none of us really have any idea what we're doing. So we're
That's
just
really
like,
important to bear in mind, I think.
Exactly. We forget because it's so busy and moves so quickly that you don't get a lot of time to reflect about anything. And I think a lot of the time we are just making it up as we go along, you know, and like I'm literally just starting to get my head around 8 months in this week around DAOs and DeFi, which I didn't understand at all. Now I'm starting to, and I'm quickly becoming a convert. Yeah, I'm quickly becoming converted to the idea that, and I'll probably repeat this later on, that if you're a creator in this space, you ought to be involved in at least one DAO, like an art DAO.
Yeah,
like
and I also think
something else.
I think DeFi is a really interesting place to be. And for anyone who doesn't know what that is, that's decentralized finance. So essentially, blockchain is looking to replace the traditional banking system in a way where you are far more in control of your own finances.
It's just turning me on a little bit talking about this.
Look, when lockdown happened last year, me and my wife, literally, our honeymoon was spent till 3 a.m. researching DeFi every day. There's probably a bit too much of an insight, but it was pretty hot. And look, to be honest, I'm glad we did. You know, it was a really good jumpstart. There was this thing last year called DeFi Summer, which was wintertime in Australia, but it was nuts. And all these new protocols launching every day. And essentially, a lot of my banking now is done on chain. I don't use traditional banks a lot, and it suits me a lot better. But hey, look, we can talk about this before. We could probably go for 3 hours before even getting into the exhibition.
Sure.
So shall we walk in and bring everyone in with us?
Yeah.
And I'm just going to say good morning to Wrong Bedroom's here. Jody Lee is here. Good morning, Jody. Thanks for tuning in.
Hi, Wrong Bedroom.
Ben,
thanks for joining. Hi,
Ben. I think that's Fourth Perspective, right? He's tuning in.
Yes.
He's making some waves at the moment. Guy. He's making some big waves.
Sure is. Yeah, very quickly. He's come up very quickly. Yeah.
Cool. All right. All my screens have just disappeared because my mouse is bugging. Hang on. Give me a sec, everybody. Okay, we're back. All right, let's go into the exhibition. Okay. And here we are. This is something I've come across. It's a 3D gallery builder called Kunst Matrix. And I'm very excited because this is my first art gallery.
Or if you're Australian, Kunst Matrix.
Kunst Matrix. Absolutely. So here we are entering. All of this work is done by ZAM and represents, am I right in saying, various stages of your art career as well as your crypto art career?
Yes. So Alex has asked me to, initially asked me to select 8 pieces that represented, I just wanted to talk about, but it seemed clear to me that they had to represent very clear moments in my journey in the space. And actually it was very easy to pick 8 out. Like straight away I knew which ones they were and why they were important to me. So it looks great. So
I think it looks lovely.
Yeah. So all key moments kind of on my journey, like they were first something or, some kind of special moment they represent for me. So maybe we should just go to the first one, which is Ethcropolis, which was allegedly my first official NFT, which is over kind of in the back corner there.
Okay,
sort of
let's
gold.
wander over and have a look. So this is Ethcropolis or Easthcropolis, depending on how you want to pronounce it.
Well,
and inspired very much by Metropolis, I imagine.
Yeah, it is. When I was first introduced to this space by Jim, who I think is watching.
Yep.
You know, Jim's got like a great eye and a lot of knowledge about art and art history. I think anybody who's read his articles on Nifty Art Collector, and if you're not subscribed, go to Nifty Art Collector right now. Subscribe. Great articles, especially lately. His tips on newer artists to invest in at lower price points. So
yeah,
at the
I
beginning,
found a lot of value in that newsletter. Actually,
absolutely. Like, I mean, I've like made a lot of great connections from those articles alone. So Jim has like a very wide circle of creatives that he knows. Hey, and so I mean, he with his eye, he kind of, I guess, ultimately picked out 2 or 3 people that he knew that he said to, hey, your work would really suit the space. Like, this is what's going on. You know, you should try it. And I thought, oh, this is the same as everybody else. I thought this is kind of a scam. Like, it sounds like a scam. Like, has Jim been hacked? I mean, I wasn't really sure.
My friend's talking about crypto art. Quick, it's a cult.
Exactly. I was like, what's going on? Like, the social media's been hacked. But he did introduce me to it, and so we kind of worked through what I was going to release, more so on the second one. As I said, this was allegedly the first one. The first one was kind of like a woman who was kind of like a face in a lettuce that blinked, and Jim was like, it's just not sexy. Like, nobody wants a lettuce lady, so try again. So he did actually give me some tips on like what would kind of work, like, you know, like collectors really love kind of moving parts and that sort of thing. So I thought, right, I'm going to start again, and really with a bang. I'm going to do some animation and just make it like integrate something about cryptocurrency. So I kind of came up with this idea to do Brigitte Helm as this kind of goddess of F. So this was my first go. Like, I'd never done any animation before. So not only was it like my first official NFT, but it was also my first go at animation. So like, as we've probably just touched on, you have to learn everything so fast in this space. And I was like, well, I'm just going to have to learn. So I just taught myself some basic animation, and it was like a huge amount of frames, and really complicated, but it could have actually been double to make it look smoother. But I think this kind of like slightly clunky animation sort of suits the kind of 1930s. Was it 1927? Metropolis? Anyway, that period.
Probably
that
in the
period.
20s, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was 27 it came out. And so I thought, well, it kind of suits the feel of it that I want. So, yeah, so it was, that was my first go at animation and my first official NFT. And it was a lot of fun. Like, it was a really exciting time. Like, I was really excited. Like, it was my debut. So, yeah, it was a lot of fun to do.
I really love all the details in there with the sparkles and the cogs and the circuit boards and the ETH symbols. I find the ETH symbol bra very Austin Powers like, maybe. But
yeah, not bad for a first go, I have to say.
I like it.
Not
yeah,
bad at
I
all.
do like it.
Yeah, so I do have a fond spot for it. But yeah, so that was the first one, and I think I learned a lot from doing this, like, very quickly. So then I guess I just applied that, going, well, actually everything changed, and we'll get to that. Everything changed quite dramatically because my style had always been sort of very much like this, very airbrushed and polished looking, and like I've always had a great interest in futurism. Like, I've always really loved kind of like these archaic images of what the future would look like. You know, sort of Jules Verne-ish kind of stuff. And then also like in the 90s, I was like a really big fan of Afrofuturism and still am, like whatever Missy
Some
Elliott
great
was
imagery in
doing.
that. Hey,
Yeah. And like really you could say the whole kind of like movement and aesthetic was spearheaded by Hype Williams, the
yeah,
director, who's done some absolutely brilliant video clips for people. Like you could reel off a whole list of them. But yeah, so what I sort of discovered that people weren't really, like from me, they weren't really interested in that kind of futuristic, surreal, kind of really polished look. And I think the problem was, I realized in retrospect, it kind of sat between two worlds. Like, and this is something I realized like it took a while to get my head around the space and realize there's this sort of different genres of people working, like there's pockets of people working in different genres. And obviously the main and best well-known one is that sort of 3D and CGI look that people do, that crypto art's kind of become known for.
you mean the orange
And
astronauts and flamingos? That look?
yes, some of that.
Which I,
You know,
I
some of
like.
them.
There's just a lot of it.
Well, there's some of it I absolutely like. A lot of it I absolutely love.
Mm.
We'll touch on this later. You can love something and still be critical. You know, you shouldn't ever lose that. But
Yeah.
I think the problem with this style of work from me is it doesn't sit in that 3D CGI world, nor does it sit at the opposite end. It's kind of in the middle, and people don't really know what to do with it. So then
I think
everything changed.
that's a really interesting point. I mean, for me coming into this and collecting works, I'm looking for things that are either really beautiful traditional art pieces or something that really push the boundary of what digital can do. And I guess that thing that does
Right.
sit in the middle is kind of like, yeah, I'm not quite sure
Exactly.
what to do with it. Like you
Yeah.
just said, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So then everything changed pretty quickly. And what do we have next? I think that I released
Marlene.
Marlena as that one right at the back there.
On
It
the
was
right?
kind of the
Which
moment where everything changed. Yeah. So
There
that
we
one
go.
has a bit of a story behind it, which a lot of people know, which is I started making these before I even went to art school. So back in the late 80s, and I had to make myself sound ancient, but I am. Let's just face facts. Like, I'm not a young person in crypto art. I'm a person with like a long background. And so I was making these, I had this kind of obsession with this still of Marlene Dietrich, which is from a movie called Destry Rides Again, which came out in 1938, I believe. And she plays this saloon owner called, oh God, what was her name? Not Dusty, something like that. She had some kind of like very evocative name. And I loved that still. I mean, it's very kind of lush. I don't know who took the still, but it's kind of a famous one. And I was using that a lot in the late 80s and doing this entire series of work. And then, you know, life moved on. And then I think when I kind of moved to fully digitally creating about 2010, 11, which was also very early days, and a lot of people didn't get it and certainly didn't value it. I was just at home, I was filing some stuff. I came across an old photo, which we might show in a minute, and thought, oh yeah, I used to do those, you know, with my new skills. Why don't I try doing it again just for fun and see if I can make them completely digitally without like actually cutting up bits of paper or using any paint, and see if it works. So I made this one. And I was like, actually, that's great. I like it. And so I made another couple just for fun. So I made 3 of them, and then I just put them away and forgot about it. And so at some point, kind of like in my first month in crypto art, I was very much about trying a whole bunch of different things and seeing what worked. And this is where Twitter comes in handy, or social media in general, to get a feel for what people are interested in and liking. And so I posted this to Twitter. People really liked it, and I thought, okay, I'm going to mint it. So I minted it too. I was with Rarible at that stage, which I'm no longer with. We can get to that later if we have time. And so I put it on Rarible, not really having any great expectations, and it sold out pretty quickly. So people were starting to kind of buy things, and this one kind of went pretty quick, I think, within a couple of days, or maybe even a day. I can't remember. I think
Yeah,
it took
wow,
2 or 3
that is
days.
quick.
All of a sudden, people kind of started paying attention and saying how much they liked it. And I was kind of like, well, that's random, isn't it? You know, like I
I got to
really
say,
enjoy
like,
doing collage work, though. Yeah.
I got to say, like, your work was really, I think I said to you, your work was really the first kind of art NFT that I bought. And the reason being that I was looking through OpenSea, and I'd come
Nice.
from Twitter, where a lot of this
Hmm.
activity is happening. And anyone, I think, wanting to get into this space, really, Twitter is going to be your best platform as your kind of
Absolutely.
launching point.
Yeah.
But so
Yeah.
I'd heard about, the NFTs last year, and I was so deep into DeFi, I wasn't really thinking about this stuff. And then this year I thought, no, I'll start looking, and came across various platforms like OpenSea, and there was just a plethora of like garbage, basically. There was just cheap ripoffs of things and bizarre like little editions of 100 collectible things, and everyone trying like cash grabs, basically. And then in the middle of it all, I saw, I think it was the Elvis piece and one of your Marlene pieces, and it just kind of really stood out. And I remember coming back the next
Yeah.
day and the next day again, and I was like, oh, there's actual art on here. Like, this is really cool.
Hmm.
And so I went ahead and
Mm.
bought it, and that's when our
Mm.
conversation started through Twitter, where I think I got
Yes.
in touch with you and said, oh, hey, I've just bought your work and really like it. What's the story? And turns out we're both
Yeah.
Australian. So there you go. There's a little,
Mm.
the people you meet
Plethora is a
along the way.
word that's just not used enough.
Plethora.
Yeah,
It's
people
a
should
hard
use
one.
it more. So yeah, I mean, I really do like to talk to collectors and get to know them. I think it's also really important to do that. I think it's another thing that people don't really kind of soak in is that when people are buying a piece of work from you, and this goes for the IRL art world as well, is that they're buying a relationship with you.
Yeah.
So most collectors are really interested to know how your mind works and why you do the things that you do. So that's an important part of it. Like there's a few people who don't, for whatever reason, want to talk to people who buy their work. There's also collectors who want to stay completely anonymous and not talk to the artists. But I think it's a rare thing. And so you develop these wonderful relationships with the buyers as well. And also some of them can come up with give really great advice for a start. Like X-Ray is one, I'd say, mid-whale collector who has a fantastic eye and a great collection that he collects from all different platforms. Like no bars how he will go and buy from any platform if he thinks the work is great. He's given me some fantastic advice, and I've had collectors also come up with some fantastic ideas as well, which we'll get to later. But there's nothing negative about it, like only beneficial. So yeah. So over to the right, we have, this is something I found yesterday. The very first Marlena that I made in late 1987, I remember, before my final year of high school, which is now giving away my age, kind of. So yeah, I was kind of like stoked to find this yesterday. Like it's, how old does that make it? Like 30,
Well, 87 would
32
be
or 33?
34.
Yeah, so this is where I started, and like I was a teenager, and at the time I'd always had like part-time jobs. My parents were sort of very focused on like making us kids have a part-time job and sort of learning like work ethic and that sort of thing. So I always had a part-time job from when I was quite young. And at this point I was working for Woolworths at the time. And back in the day when they had bag boys, I started as a bag boy. But at this point, I wouldn't say graduated. For me, it was a graduation, moving to shelf stacking. So I was out the back with all these mounds of boxes, and nobody's ever cared about the boxes that products come in bulk. So they weren't really updated. They were very old fashioned. And at this time I was absolutely obsessed with the New York downtown art scene, like art and performance, and had this great book called New, Used and Improved that had come out that year, which focused on all of the sort of, Basquiat, Keith Haring, like they were all just starting to get well known. All the performance artists like the B-52s and John Sex and Karen Finley, and all these people that were kind of coming out of new wave. So I was completely obsessed with the New York scene, particularly Andy Warhol. Like, I was an absolute massive fan, if this isn't obvious enough for you. So I was kind of out the back in Woolworths, and like in between stacking shelves, I was cutting bits out of the boxes and putting them in a sack, which I'd take home. And then I'd kind of make these collages with bits from the boxes and paint on them, and photocopies. So this was like painted photocopies, and my very first Marlena. So it has a place in my heart, this one.
Love it. I love hearing these stories. This is what you were saying earlier about, people want to know what happens behind. And I mean, this is a big part of why we're here today, is to actually find this stuff out, because everything does move so quickly that here we are, we can spend a bit of time and get to know you and what you do. I love that this actually started at Woolies. That's really cool.
Absolutely. And so my plan was, like, straight after high school, I was going to New York and I was going to meet Andy Warhol and try and get a job at the factory. And then this year he died suddenly and kind of unexpectedly, although he always said that he completely expected it to happen. But that's another story for another time, if you know anything of that story. But yeah, that was my goal, was to go to New York, become an artist, meet Andy Warhol, become a protege. And so he died, and then also that year was the Black Monday stock market crash, which I remember distinctly as well. And it was kind of like, well, maybe that's not happening after all. So, young dreams crushed. So
well, from Woolies to Warhol would have been such a good story, though. That could have been the title of your biography.
Absolutely. That's a great title. So now what have we got next?
Well, I really love seeing the evolution here. Next we have Fractal Boy. So we're going to go back through the gallery a little bit. So I'll just do a little 180 over here. I do love the colors in your work, Zam. Like, I love how it really stands out. Just beautiful colors and palettes, and very vibrant and bold. And I think you were saying that's something that you've noticed a lot with Australian work in general, is it seems to have this kind of very in-your-face style, which I really like.
Well, this is going to sound weird, but I didn't actually realize it was so kind of colorful and kind of kitschy. I was talking to a friend and they're like, really? You only just realized that? But I actually didn't. It is quite punchy. But it is something that I'm talking again about, sort of like these pockets that are developing, and genres in general. I think the Australian pocket of crypto artists, I've only just kind of recently noticed, now that we're all kind of pulling together into a group with the new Discord that started. And you can kind of have a look and actually directly compare. And I think there's a real Australian look that's, I wouldn't say developing, but has always been there. If you look, I don't know how many people are in New South Wales and got to see Step Into Paradise, which was the exhibition at the Powerhouse, which was fucking amazing. Like, the art direction by Tony Asnes was incredible. Like, they must have spent so much money on it. They completely recreated the interior of the store from the Strand Arcade that Jenny Key and Linda Jackson had. But there's that whole look of, like, so over the top and so much pattern and so much colour. And then you could say Ken Doan as well. You know, there's this kind of real Australian aesthetic that's known for being really colourful and really detailed and really over the top. You know, you can think of also Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, and how that's become like...
Oh, and the Baz Luhrmann films as well.
The flag for Australia is the sort of like real aesthetic. But then when you start to look at all the Australian artists together, you start seeing it. It's like Jen Stelco's work, Wrong Bedroom's work, Marco Maddox's work. It's all this like incredibly detailed... and
Jeff,
really
is it Jeff Keogh
work.
or Jeff, is that how you pronounce it? Who does all the illustrations where it's layer upon layer upon layer and it's kind of symmetrical and then coloured in afterwards?
Right.
Is it Jeff Keogh? I think. His stuff. And then Sky Nectar is another one with the colours, and White-Top.
Absolutely.
Keep listing them all. Yeah.
And so you could actually curate like an exhibition of just a few people and really showcase this look sort of quite clearly to people, like demonstrate that idea quite clearly. But yeah, I mean, there's like, just to elaborate on that a little bit, I think Australian crypto artists like absolutely hold their own against international artists. Like, we've got some incredible talents, like some of the top talents in the world, Jason Eber, Katie Arrington, you know, who have become incredibly successful recently. We're going to anyway. It was kind of on the cards. If you couldn't see that, you're probably blinded deaf. But, you know, we've got some incredible talent, and we can completely stand up on our own against the international scene. Yeah, so this piece, okay, going back to talking about like my earlier work where I was doing this sort of really polished, surreal, futuristic inspired look. This piece originally was from an exhibition that I did about 20 years ago in Sydney called Salon of Curiosities. It was a 10 or 12 piece show, oils on canvas. And how that came about was that I started going into work. At the time I was manager of an art department in, I wouldn't call it the fashion industry in Australia, in apparel. And they had this computer that they'd bought. This is like in the late 90s, and it had this like expensive textile graphics software, and nobody used it because the art department for me was an incredibly talented artist, like amazingly talented. But when I started, things were still being done, like you'd paint gouache on photocopies that had been sellotaped together. And so this computer just sat there unused. And I believe the business had spent something ludicrous on it at the time because that stuff was expensive, $20,000 or $30,000 for this setup, and nobody used it. So I started coming in on the weekends to teach myself how to use computer programs just for fun, because I thought, well, I'm really interested in where this can go, like technologically. Can I apply this to my work and like make work with it? So I started going in on the weekends and playing around, and realised that I could actually design my paintings before I painted them. So these were all originally done in oils on canvas, but I did actually design them all digitally, like back in the late 90s. That is when I started. I quickly realised that it was a really great way to get exactly the look that I wanted before I started. Like, it was a real time saver. So this was a piece from that show. And then sort of back in my early days of making work in crypto art, I kind of just messed around with it. Like, I added some layers over the top and kind of shattered it and put the two colours together. I sort of did two different colourways first, and they both sold out. So I made this one that was a sort of culmination of both of them. So it's like got a lot of layers. It's like old work, new work. But what was special about this is that Cody saw it and bought an edition for himself. So that was a real moment that should have got me more traction, and it didn't.
Do you want to just talk about who Cody is, just briefly?
Oh, Cody's an OG, and this is like a lot of this is stuff that we've already got art history here in crypto art that people aren't aware of. There's people who are coming in now aren't aware of like the very early days of crypto and how there's been these different waves of people. So Cody is like an OG, along with Rob Ness, Sarah Zucker. Like, there's a whole list of people. A lot of money, of course, is an important one. There's like a list of people who were like first making work in the space in the very early days. And there's quite a few of those people are still like in the top, ranked in the top 20. And Cody was one of those people. So he's like really a revered figure in crypto art. And so he actually bought one of these for himself. So I was very pleased about that. But yeah, not as much as attention as Fourth Perspective got for a lot of money buying a piece. So I was like, damn, like, I just think it was too early, you know, like people didn't really care that much.
Timing's everything, isn't it? But yeah, I mean, well deserved for Fourth Perspective as well. Like, that piece, I had my eye on it from the very beginning, and I was just like, you know what, if I buy this now, no one's going to see it because I'm nobody. But if someone else gets it, like someone like a lot of money, that's fantastic. Yeah.
Very talented and a very nice guy who deserves whatever success.
Absolutely. He's getting at the moment. Yeah, well worth a follow on Twitter.
A fruit fly, get out of here.
We've got some comments. So Jody's loving the art. Fourth Perspective, who we've just been talking about, appreciates your hustle. I think that might have been around the Woolies to Warhol kind of story, which is really nice. He's giving us a little laugh.
Hustle. Yeah, I don't know about hustle. I work hard. I do that. I always have. So
yeah, if anyone's got any questions, please leave them in the comments because, yeah, we're happy to answer anything. I know this is a really new space, so if there are any artists watching who are interested in finding out more about it or anything, you can...
Just to go back to that for a sec, like newer artists really need to acclimatise themselves with the earlier artists that were in the scene, the OGs that I just mentioned, to see where this space has come from and why people have so much respect for. If you want to talk about hustle, you know, go and look at those artists and what they were doing when there wasn't any of the sort of level of attention that's now on the digital art world, crypto art. So they were doing it when nobody cared and, you know, nobody cared. And, you know, they're the originators and deserve a lot of respect. So people need to know their names.
Very true.
Let's
Very
move.
True. We have another Marlene if you wanted to do that, or do you want to move on to the Bowie move? Up to you.
No, we'll just quickly touch on this one. There's not a lot to say about it, really. So, but
is it this one at the end here?
It's that one over there, Marlene melting. So the reason why this one was important was because this was kind of the moment that everything changed, in that I was getting interest and I minted this one and it pretty much sold out within 3 hours. And I was like, what the fuck just happened? You know, it was kind of that moment where I thought, okay, this is what people want, so I'm going to give people what they want, but it's still got to be what I like. You know, like I've got to enjoy making it and enjoy the end result. And this was that. And I minted it and it literally sold out within 3 hours. Like people were like waiting to buy one. And admittedly, they weren't selling for a lot at the time. But yeah, that's why that one was a pivotal moment for me, is that I was like, well,
I think that's something
this kind of cements
really important to mention just briefly for people as well is price points and things like that. Like a lot of people come in and do price very highly and other people price quite low and allow people to get into the collection. And what are your views on that?
Fairly clear. Start low and then build up, unless like the only people who can get away with coming in and asking really high prices and that working for them are people who are already established names, usually in the IRL world. Like a great example is James Jean, whose work I really like. He came in and I think he actually went straight to Foundation, which is interesting. It was at that moment where Foundation was just going boom. All of a sudden a couple of weeks ago, or a few weeks ago now. Yeah. As you say, time kind of compacts. But it was that moment
a long time ago.
It was like a week or two into Foundation taking off, and James Jean, as far as I know, just went straight there. Released his first piece, which was like a kid on a skateboard or something like that. I mean, you just look at his work, you know it's his. And I think it got like well over USD $20,000. So somebody like that who's already got like, you know, and he's got like 1 million followers on Instagram as an artist. Like that's kind of incredible. So he's very popular, very productive. People know his name. So he came in as an artist, and we'll get to the whole celeb thing later, but he came in as an artist and straight away sold for a really high price. But I think if people are coming in and they're unknown, like kind of be realistic, you know, like have a look, do your research, have a look at what other people are asking that are kind of in your genre or on your level. Like to me, it's just logical, and then go from there. I mean, I started trying to sell things for like whatever obviously Ether's gone up a lot, like 400 or something % since I started. But back then I was trying to sell editions for whatever the ETH equivalent was in US dollars, $17.95. So I've come quite some way.
Yeah, wow.
Like my prices are still not anywhere near what other people are asking. I'd say it's a good deal.
Yeah, and then you get this whole effect of secondary market where you can build in royalties into the platforms, right? So if I buy one of your works and then I sell it to someone else on the same platform, and like there's a lot of technicalities and logistics around that, which we may or may not get into, but there is essentially a mechanism whereby... Yeah, but there is a mechanism whereby the artist can actually nominate their own royalty percentage so that every secondary sale is actually a revenue stream. So I think that's something really worth thinking about from an artist perspective as
Yeah.
well, that your first sale isn't necessarily the only one. If you value your work and think it will have a lifetime,
royalties,
if they have royalties,
absolutely.
and again, you have to do your research, and that will evolve more and more and more. Yeah.
I keep telling people to be strategic about it, like educate yourself,
Hugely.
talk to people, and find out about how it works. But yeah, I mean, there's a sort of trend for like that probably consider themselves premium platforms. I'd say aspiring to upper echelon platforms it's become a trend that they're not offering a royalty facility to artists, like a lot of them, and it's just lame at this point. Like there has to be some kind of incentive, like the base incentives for creatives to come to your platform and want to sell. Like I'm sure like a lot of those people who own platforms think that they've got this and that we need them, but that's not. Like the whole idea of this is like decentralized everything. So the fact that these sort of like gatekeepy platforms think that they can kind of like make the rules is, I don't think that's how it's going to work out. You know, like we kind of need them, but on the other hand, they also need us. So, and there's like a little bit of arrogance there, I feel.
Well, there always has been from any kind of industry like that, I think. It's kind of what they thrive on. I'm just chucking up our Twitter handles, so anyone who wants to get in touch can do on Twitter if you want to find out more or anything like that.
Again, premium platform owners are trying to kind of insert themselves into the space, like we were talking about before, like trying to put themselves in as the middleman, and sort of at the moment they are needed to a certain degree, but there might come a time when they're not very soon. So, sorry, did you say there was a question?
No, not a question, but we do have Jen Stelko, who's just joined the stream from Dubai. So I'm just wondering if maybe we go out of order a little bit and perhaps jump into the collaboration piece that the two of you have worked on.
Let's do that. Yeah.
So this is pretty exciting. We've got Jen who's joining us all the way from Dubai. I'm going to bring Jen into the stream and replace me, I think would probably be the smart thing to do. And I'll just chuck my voice down here. And then there we go. Jen, you are live. Good morning.
Hi Jen.
Hi, how's it going?
Very, very early in the morning there for you.
Yeah, that's all right.
So keen. Thanks so much for joining us.
Not at all.
So we're gonna talk about like a little bit about Stranded Saturday, which is a piece that Jen invited me to collaborate on with her, and so it was my first appearance of any kind on Super Rare, and might be the only appearance I ever make. But yeah, it was really great to kind of like be on that platform and also sell something. But do you want to just talk a bit about how we kind of like met online and how the idea came about?
Yeah, okay. So I started doing this series on Super Rare, which was called Club Kids. Sorry, it is very early. And it was based around no first-hand experience, but just that I'd seen this, this sort of glamorized 1990s New York trend of like elaborate costumes. And I watch a lot of docos. It's one of my favorite pastimes. And I came across one that was about these guys. And then I get it, like anything, I watch something in a documentary and then I start doing sort of rabbit hole spiral searches online. And I was just coming across all of these images and I just loved everything that I saw, all of the costuming and stuff. So I started making these Club Kids pieces. And then you, Darian, saw them and had a few things to say, which I loved because you were a part of the Australian version of the Club Kids scene. What I loved was hearing, firsthand experiences from it. And in this piece, it's called Stranded Saturday, and it's actually got living people in it. They're not just, they're two-dimensional in that they're drawings, but they're real people and they're all characters that, Darren, ZAM, you knew them, right? So when we were putting we were collaging all the images together, you were calling them all by name. Whereas
Yeah,
I
so
was just
I was
calling
kind
them
of
all like the guy with the sparkly jacket or
little
whatever.
stories like as we went about the people in it. But that's true. I was part of that scene in the early '90s in Australia. But I've also kind of always been really interested, as we mentioned earlier in the podcast, about the downtown scene in New York. Those artists and performers have always been an obsession of mine. And then I ended up working for the Museum of Contemporary Art in Sydney on the Lee Bowery retrospective. So I got to do this like really cool
That's
paper
right.
doll book, which I've shown you, as well as merchandise. And then somebody bought one, and who was a friend of James St. James, and gave it to him. People don't know who James St. James is. He was one of like the most famous early '90s club kids in New York, who was a good friend of Michael Alec, and there was that whole like scandal about the murder. And Michael Alec just died actually a few weeks ago, but James St. James doesn't really like to talk about it that much. But somebody gave the paper doll book to James St. James, and that's how I got to know James, because he absolutely loved it. So I've always sort of been like in and out of being really interested in the club kids wherever they were, whether it was New York or like London is a big one. Yeah. And then also there was a scene happening in Australia, which like probably doesn't get very much attention. So it was kind of awesome to bring attention to that. And
I honestly didn't even know about it.
Mm.
Okay, so
yeah, I mean, there were some people doing incredible looks that, haven't ever really gotten a lot of traction. Like there was a point a few years ago where like the media got reinterested in the RAT parties, the recreational arts team, which was a huge thing in Sydney in the 80s and 90s, and they brought out a lot of overseas acts. Like they brought Grace Jones out for this dance. They had these absolutely massive dance parties, and why it was so significant was it actually started the international dance party craze. And a friend of mine literally started these parties in his apartment in Elizabeth Bay. Jack Vidgen, who's now deceased, but he was very much part of that scene. I was part of that scene. So it's actually really cool to make these people into the icons that I feel they deserve to be, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And so,
and this is the first one in a series that we're going to do together, right? Because there's a lot of characters that we didn't include in this one.
Yeah.
What I love about
we've
looking
already
at
actually
now,
started on.
Sorry, go on.
We've already actually started on one, right? So it's a second one. So yeah, what you love about.
Yeah, what I love about this is something that comes from collaborating and something that you don't really, you can't really make on your own, which is you can see that, I mean, there was sort of a starting point somewhere, but it's hard to find now. But the way that you collaborate in a crypto piece, right, for everyone watching, is that one artist will do a piece, will start putting something together and then send it away and not have it anymore, and wait to see what the other artist comes back with. And you end up with this back and forth. And while to be unsure of where it's going, and then when it comes back to you, it ends up taking some unexpected places. And you can see from this one that it was almost like we couldn't find a stopping point. We just kept going with, we need to add this, we need to add this, and it's not colourful enough, and it's not, we really wanted to make every tiny piece super busy, which is something that I really love in art, and something that I love about your art, Darian, and all of your collage-y stuff.
Did it? Yeah. Do you think it had enough colour and pattern in the end?
I think we can go bigger next time.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, for me, it was like a really great, because I'm really burned by collaborations in the IRL world. So what's been great for me in crypto art is doing these collabs with people. I've also done collabs with Jim Dallasudis. I've got something coming up with Sky Nectar. And so it's kind of like reinvigorated me to do collaboration work in the truest sense after having like quite a few bad experiences. And this was actually a great experience, as you say. So just passing it back and forth, not knowing what was going to happen, just seeing where it went, was really cool. And so I think that like if you imagine like what a collaboration could be, ideally, like for me it was kind of ideal, like it was really that smooth and that like it just worked so well. and everything just sort of seemed right. So, but I think what was great about this was getting like making iconography essentially of a few people that I knew. Like, I mean, most of these, I'm just trying to count up how many of these people are still with us. Like, I'd say 4 out of the 6 or 7.
I want to share for a second the starting point that we actually had, which was Darian sent me a file on Dropbox, which was like hundreds and hundreds of images that he'd sourced over time. That, you know, I would never have found myself, and you'd like meticulously labeled them with everybody's, all of the characters' names, and they were from really interesting places. Like, there was some really cool photography shoots and some newspaper clippings and stuff, and it was just this amazing treasure trove of imagery. And what ended up happening was I just picked, I didn't really look into who I was choosing. It was just about the image for me. But what was funny was that after, you know, when we started to choose them, the stories that would come out from them that you knew, and it ended up being, a lot of it was the case of, I'm so glad you picked that one because of this. And it was so much fun.
I think that's a really great way to approach it, which is a completely different way from I'd approach it, because I can't be completely objective about it. So to pick things like purely from like a visual standpoint is also like what makes it a great collaboration, like two completely different viewpoints. So yeah, I was really happy to get some of these people into this one, like Brenton, who's the figure in the sort of red gingham. Like, that outfit is probably his most famous. Like, he was a performance artist who made costumes. That gingham woman is probably his most famous costume. It's now in the Mars, the Powerhouse Museum collection in Sydney. They've got like his last 4 or so. There's only 6 costumes remaining, and they have 4. Gingham Woman was originally blue and white, so like how it worked for this was I changed it to red and white. I don't know, like that's just what worked. Not everything has to be true to life, but I guess my point is that he was such a huge influence on me as a close friend. He's no longer with us, unfortunately, that I was just like really pleased to kind of give him this moment, so to speak. Yeah,
it's a homage.
Absolutely. So yeah, and the thing is about that sort of all that source material came from a book that I'm also working on, which has kind of art and stories. It's nearly finished, but that's how I started putting that archive of stuff together in the first place. And so the interesting thing is that a lot of those images like that are also kind of intertwined in that the stylists and the photographers, who are also characters in that scene, ended up like photographing some of the other people. So it's all kind of like so kind of intertwined with each other as well, that it's really hard to kind of separate things out. But yeah, I mean, I like the idea of kind of making characters out of real people in a way, like kind of like restyling them, if that makes sense. Yeah. And also for us, like I would definitely put us in the same genre of sort of more tactile, painterly artists with an IRL background in crypto art. And so it's really interesting. I think of us as kind of bridging this gap in between IRL and the digital art world in a way that's actually going to really draw people in. And in fact, you're working on a project at the moment. I don't know if you want to talk about it yet, because it's yet to launch.
Oh yes,
I believe.
I'd love to.
Yeah, no, go ahead. So if you want to explain a bit about what you're doing.
Yeah, well, I'm starting a new platform. It's called Morrow Collective. Here in Dubai, I've got a couple of mates who have come together with me on this, and we have a very interesting skill set between us. So I'm an artist, you know, been working as an artist for 10 years or so, but then in crypto since what can be considered maybe as the early days, even though it wasn't that long ago. And we have another friend, Anna, who is an art curator and journalist, and she's been writing about art in Dubai for also about 10 years, and she's very in with all of the galleries and all of the artists here. And then another friend, Claire, who's our marketing and comms guru. And what we've done is partnered with a group of collectors who have an enormous space in crypto voxels, where we've built a gallery. And it's interesting you're talking about bridging the gap between in real life art and crypto. That's exactly what our mission is. So what we've noticed in crypto in my time here is that two things. One thing is that there's not been any space for galleries. And that's good in a way because it gives unrepresented artists just like me somewhere to put their art and to sell it and to do well. And there are a lot of platforms doing that now, and they're doing it really well. So we did not need another one like that. But there was nowhere for galleries yet. And the problem with not bringing galleries in is a lot of people see an art gallery as just a white wall to put your art on that takes 50% of sales, right? But what they actually do is so much more than that. They source exceptional artists, and they help them develop their craft, and they work as PR agents, and they make them what they are, and they actually put in a lot of work. And what they do is boost the art world. So we think that by partnering with real life galleries, we can bring in a level of curation and raise the quality of crypto art at the moment. Because another little problem is now that it's becoming like big news, and everybody with an iPad and an Apple Pencil thinks that they'd like to cash in on it. The market is getting flooded. I mean, even on, I'm lucky enough to be a verified artist on Super Rare, but once you're verified on Super Rare, you can put up anything you want. There's no curation at all. So I can put up 4 or 5 pieces a week, and nobody's watching me for quality control. And there are thousands of artists on Super Rare now, so there's hundreds of pieces going up a day, and it's really hard to sift through. And once a piece is, a few days old, it's not going to really be stumbled across very easily. Anyway, so what we're making, to just cut it short a little bit, is a platform that only brings in, we're looking at maybe 50 artworks a month to start with, and we're sourcing them all from established physical art galleries. So we're bringing in artists who haven't made NFTs before, introducing them to the space and helping them with the technicalities of becoming involved. And we're doing it exhibition by exhibition in our virtual gallery. But phase 2 and phase 3 and down the line, when we're ready, we would like to start actually representing our own exceptional artists, not through galleries. Yeah.
So many interesting points there. Yeah, so many interesting points there, and I think one is don't discount what IRL galleries and that art world can do. There's a lot 100%. Of talk about, we don't need that anymore. Like, it's so DeFi, we don't need it anymore. Decentralized, sorry, that we don't need that sort of thing anymore. But don't discount people's experience, and talents and what they can bring. So
look, the
thanks
other
for
thing
joining
is
us.
No worries. I've probably talked about it enough. I'll have my own segment maybe in a month when I'm ready to talk about it.
No, I think it's actually really interesting because it's one of the things that I've found is really lacking, even just a basic function. So we've got all these, Showtimes, or you've got your artist platforms, and now the This Is Ito platform and other ones, but there's no way to actually even organize your work on there or your collection. No. It's literally just by order in which you've created it or bought it. Yeah. But it would be so nice to actually even just basic curation would be wonderful.
There is something new coming that I want to mention for one of our fellow Aussie crypto buddies, which is Hipworth. Do you guys know who I'm talking about?
Oh, I love Hipworth.
His art is amazing. And he's working on now something that's like think of like Instagram, but for NFTs. And it's going to be kind of a way of being able to see your whole collection or all of your creations in one sort of place across platforms. That'll be really interesting. I'm wondering if there's a space in there for organizing your collections a bit.
I think I may have dropped a comment in the Discord about that actually when he was talking about, I think the project's called, can we mention the name, do you think? Or
Flip It?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see why not.
Yeah, I think it's called Flip It. So it's in development. But that was one of the
Sorry,
suggestions.
Hipworth. Sorry if it was a spoiler, Hipworth. So
Sorry. Jim's just jumped in and said curation is the future of crypto art. And I think I'd have to agree, that
Jim.
it's the future of the internet, essentially. It's such a jumbled bazaar, the internet, that you really need some form of
Jim might be the
curation.
future of crypto art for all we know. Right?
Yeah.
He's got his eye on the prize, and yeah, people should listen to his experience and his foresight. I think he has some really interesting things to say, and he's a good curator himself of up and coming, sort of like kind of undiscovered people that are entering the space. So now, Jen, I wanted to ask you, if people are interested in Morrow, where do they go and find out more about it at the moment?
Okay, well, I'll just give you our website because it's got links to all of our socials. So it's www.morrow-collective.com.
Yeah, and so some screenshots of the interior of the gallery are like making their way online, aren't they, already?
Yeah, we have a teaser trailer. Something that people have been really interested in, which I wasn't quite aware how much of a big deal this would be, but something that we're offering is we can sell the NFT, obviously for ETH, but also the physical counterpart is going to also be for sale for ETH, which I don't think exists at the moment on any platforms. But yeah, that's in the teaser trailer, and that's what's been giving us a lot of reshares and a good response.
Oh, cool. Yeah, there's not very many artists who are doing that, but one artist that I can think of that's doing really well with that concept is Fabio Giampetro. I think you pronounce his name.
Yeah.
I think
he does Italian the portraiture cityscapes.
Yeah. So when you look at the face up close, you realise it's amazing cityscape just of buildings, and he's done. I'm just trying to think of Julian Assange, and he's done really well with that. Like offering, like for him, I've spoken to him, and for him, the NFT part is kind of secondary. Like he's always going to view himself as an IRL painter. And that's what he does, but like he's kind of bridging both worlds at the moment, and
it's a good example.
Getting a really good reception. Yeah, absolutely.
I think there always will be a camp that will just be crypto native, and we were here first, and I think you see that playing out with like the Bitcoin kind of maximalism and early adopters who really shun anything new. But then I think there will be this other side of people coming in from real world art and that crossover point, and I don't know if the two will necessarily ever fully mesh, but that's my opinion anyway, just that there'll be these two distinct camps.
And then there'll be people in the middle, and that's where I feel like Jen and I are like part of that group of people who kind of like absolutely bridge that world. One article that I always point people towards when they say, what is crypto art and what's the look and what's it all about, I always tell them to go and read Colin Galtra's essay Unholy Unions, which talks about where the aesthetics come from, and the fact he uses the term nerds a lot, like he's not ashamed to say it, that there's like a lot of people in cryptocurrency who've made a lot of money, and the aesthetic kind of reflects their point of view, and how this whole culture's kind of come about around that, which mostly comes out through the sort of more 3D art. And that's just part one. Like I feel there's like somebody could write part two from the completely opposite end of the spectrum, of being an IRL artist who's come in and had to learn and kind of adapt, or someone more like me who kind of is part of both of those worlds. Like I sort of embraced that technology sort of, at a point in my career before I even knew about crypto art or digital, what was going on here at all. So yeah, there's like a part two and a part three, and I think part three is like bridging those two worlds, and like again, somebody else could write, their point of view from that place. So it's ever changing. That's the thing. It like changes day to day, week to week. And we're trying to kind of strategize about what we want to do and where we want to go. Obviously, Jen's doing a really great job of strategizing and seeing where things are going to go in the future. But we're all just guessing. We don't know. It's like one minute
but that's the fun.
In, and the next minute it's gone. Mm. So I think my poll this week showed some interesting but not particularly unexpected results about where things are going with some of the platforms at the moment, particularly a couple of premiums. There was no wow moment for me in the results of that. So, but it just demonstrates how much things have changed, like just in the last month or so. The foundations just kind of slaughtered everyone. Like, it's incredible. And I don't think anybody was expecting that, but it's a great example of how rapidly things change and how you have to really be so adaptive to the environment. You know, it's like an organism that's just, or a virus that's continually just changing all the time, you know, and developing something new.
Do you remember when a few months ago there was like a big trend in everybody trying to buy tweets?
Yes. What happened to that?
It just kind of fizzled out, didn't it? But it's so funny. What I love is that whenever there's a new thing and people are like something new, like, for example, I don't know if the listeners know, but there was this spike in the weirdest thing, which was you could buy people's tweets as if they were an NFT. And everybody jumped on it like, just in case this is the next best thing, we better get one, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So there's a couple of things like that.
How does that actually work?
Everyone's like, oh, maybe. And then I don't think that's
it's the speculative craze, isn't it? It's the gold rush. And there's a gold rush every week in crypto, I think.
How
and
it worked
1 week it's tweets.
There was a platform called Sant, I think, that was kind of really doing most of the business in tweets. But honestly, I think it died after the Jack Dorsey one sold for however much it was. Sometimes I think they're just trying things and it happens. But that object for object thing was kind of a brilliant piece of marketing, and it sent everybody rushing to hit it. And I mean, trying to mint on there, I had a complete nightmare, and I think it's because there was just so much traffic and whatnot going on. But yeah, I mean, by next week, people might have kind of forgotten about it. That's how quickly
I'm actually on there
change,
a lot at the moment. You know? There's some really cool stuff on there. And I think it's because it's such an accessible platform and cheap. Even though gas fees have come down on Ethereum this week, it's still orders of magnitude cheaper. And it just kind of lends itself to a very experimental, let's just put something up that's a bit out there and see what happens. So there's some really interesting stuff on that side. I recommend it.
Well, that's the thing about the gas fees. They're so prohibitive to creativity, I find. It's like you have to think so carefully about what you're doing. And that's just absolutely not the point. Like, the whole idea is decentralized everything, like decentralized ideas, decentralized finance, and the whole idea was supposed to be this complete, hopefully, one aspect, freedom of creativity. And if you have to think, well, I'm spending, $150 US to mint this thing, it better damn sell, and you spend a lot of time kind of thinking, what if it doesn't? Am I making that? Nobody needs that shit. It's just like a whole extra layer of, apart from waiting for gas fees to go down, that's like 2 extra layers on top of just being spontaneous as a creative.
And let's not forget as well that it might cost, if gas is high, it might cost $150 to mint a piece, and then another $150 to list it as a reserve auction. And then you've got to pay another set of gas fees to accept a bid. So actually, if you're getting it at a bad time, you want to hope that your work is selling for a decent amount, because the gas fees cut into your profit quite significantly.
Yeah, absolutely.
I had this guy bid on a piece of my art once, and I was sort of back and forthing with him a little bit on Twitter, and he was like, he didn't want to be outbid, but he was like, what sort of number would you accept on this? And I gave him a figure, and he's like, okay, well, I'm going to bid now even though gas is high. But then the expectation there was for me to accept the bid after he bid it, which I kind of had to do, even though I think it was like $250 to accept the bid. And I couldn't, in good conscience, just wait until morning when it would probably be $100 cheaper, because, it would have made me feel like a bit of a dick.
Yeah, I think it's something that people don't understand. They think, oh, great, you're on a premium site, you're selling for lots of money, but then all the fees do stack up, and maybe you're not getting as much as people think in the end. And it's if you're somebody who's coming in and you're a young artist and you're kind of you want to have a go, that's not having a go. That's there's a lot of young artists who just don't have that kind of money in reserve to pay to mint a piece. It's really unfair. But at the moment, people are, everybody's always saying this is going to be the next big thing. But at the moment, Hicket Nunk seems to be, people are saying Hicket Nunk and Color Mint on the Tezos network are going to be like the next big things. Remains to be seen. It's like,
It's definitely accessible. I think that's the first battle won, that it is very, very accessible. For a matter of a few dollars, or even $1, you could mint and sell pieces of work on there, as opposed to what you guys were just saying about how potentially it's up to 400, 500 US to mint, sell, accept a bid on some of these other more premium platforms on ETH.
Yeah,
and
it's just not.
That has come down now, but no, and I think it's a victim of its own success, isn't it? Too many users, it's growing too big too quickly, and I guess people are working around the clock to try and scale that. But it seems there's some band-aid fixes happening at the moment. But hopefully this year, the roadmap is that this year a lot of these issues are ironed out, and we'll see where that goes. Yeah,
everybody's figuring it out as they go, and when a problem comes up, like, there are people working on them. It's just because this is all new to everybody, right? Everybody's figuring it out.
Everybody's scrambling to catch up. Creators are scrambling to make
even
work.
Things like I've been trying to figure out.
So hard.
Yeah, it's a hustle.
It is a big hustle. And I mean, do you find that as artists you have to kind of wear marketer hats and business people hats and all that kind of stuff? Or has this allowed you to focus more on the art itself, and the blockchain kind of steps in and takes care of some of that role?
Oh, no, there's a lot of work in marketing yourself as well. That's half of it. I'd say that's about half. Once I've minted a piece, I'm then like stuck on my computer for like a good hour just making sure I've put it on social media, and I've maybe sent a link to some people who I think might like it, and reached out far and wide for asking in direct messages for retweet, something like that. It's time consuming, but it's worth putting the work. But I will say this, I've never come to a point where I felt like I could just mint something and then chillax.
That seems like a luxury, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That's like a luxury.
And I know some of the very top artists quite well, and they're not doing, they're working really hard on that as well. And I think from a collector's perspective, when you're investing in a piece, you don't want to invest in somebody who's not doing their own marketing as well, because you want to be investing in an artist who you can see has the hustle and has a little bit of drive and is going to grow. You don't want to just somebody who just sets and forgets and thinks it's going to do itself. Right.
And I think that's a problem that I noticed sort of eventually after being in the space for a while, is that some people they think that they're going to come in, they're going to make a quick buck. It's marketed to them as an easy way to make quick money, and that they can just put something up and it's just going to sell itself. But that is not how it works at all. Not at all. Not that I've discovered anyway. So, interesting.
Yeah, I think longevity of career is really interesting, and more people are looking at, this person who's minted, do they have an IRL social presence? Is there a body of work that already exists? Or is this someone who's literally just woken up today and gone, oh, there's this opportunity, I'll just create some shit and chuck it up on a platform and get rich by the end of the day?
Yeah,
and it's pretty obvious sometimes who's who,
Yeah,
you can usually tell.
Yeah. The amount of Twitter accounts that are joined in March 2021 are quite staggering in crypto art. Hey.
Yeah, it's interesting seeing new people come in now. Like, I think I noticed at some point there was like this enormous flood of people that came in after the first big Beeple sale, like in December. There was kind of a flood of people that came in. And then there was another massive one in February, which I don't really know why now in retrospect. As you say, everything moves so quickly. I can't remember what happened in February, but there was this absolutely massive influx of like a lot of young people coming in, and I noticed it. So, and speaking of
Hashmasks launched in February. I don't know if that might have had something to do with it, but Hashmasks I think was a massive catalyst for people getting in.
Yeah, it was something else that happened. I can't quite remember, but yeah, definitely there's waves of people coming in, and I'd like put myself in a kind of third wave. Like there was the OGs that we've already talked about. Then there was like the second lot of people who came in and established themselves. And then I would put myself in like the third lot of people who realized something was going on and wanted to be part of it. Like at that moment of kind of like it was becoming kind of a conscious thing, and people were kind of like their antenna were going up to something that was going on. And so that's when I came in. But you see these successive waves of people coming in, and there's a lot of talk about like the bubble. Like people love to talk about that. At some point it's probably going to happen, and it will be interesting to see who survives the purge, as I call it, like which artists are actually going to still be standing after that happens. And as you say, I just feel like there has to be like a sort of substantial background there that people can look at and say, well, this person's been hustling for a long time. They've got a history, you know, of quality work. Like they have a particular standard. You know, they're interested in actually making something of themselves, so to speak. Yeah, I don't know when that's going to happen, but at some point, like a lot of it's going to fall away. That's my feeling on it.
I actually have a real love for when people say things like, it's a bubble that's going to pop, it's a scam, you know, I don't trust it. But what that says to me is that we're all still very early. Even people who are in it now are still early enough to be in the game when it's not really recognizably trusted. You know, and I feel like it might, like I don't think that the $69 million Beeple sale was bad for us because it's put it sort of into the spotlight. I don't think that that's a sustainable amount of money that we can expect to be selling art for in future, but it's brought it to the spotlight. And I think that the prices and the, you know, the buzz might drop down a little bit, but it'll level out, and then it'll kind of sustain itself at a, you know, at sort of a more
That's
stable
sort of what
place.
I mean. I'm being really dramatic. Like when I say the purge, I'm kind of imagining it like The Handmaid's Tale. You know, it's not going to be that dramatic, but I do feel like there's a point where people will go, okay, this is crap and this is good, you know, and then there's going to be like artists that will kind of like steadily keep working consistently and rise up. Like they may not debut with the biggest sales or whatever, or make the biggest splash. They'll be around, and I'm certainly intending to, like, I'm in this for the long game and I want to be around for a while, and I know that you feel the same. So
I actually would love to talk about for a second another project that I'm working on, which is called Mothers of Ethereum.
okay.
And this is a kind of sub-community of another community. So there's a community in crypto art called WOCA, which is Women of Crypto Art. And then a sub-community of that is Mothers of Ethereum. And we literally just crypto artists who are also mothers. We've all got children, different ages. And we're having an exhibition in May. And what I've loved talking about with these other mums is that crypto art has given them the ability to support their families with their art and like a future in art, and also a way of mums to be able to make a living from their houses making art. And I just, it's such a beautiful thing that, like, it's very new. This hasn't been a thing ever before.
That sounds fascinating.
Yeah.
That sounds really, really
And where
cool.
can
And I
people
love
find
seeing
out
those
more
stories.
about that?
Well, we've got a logo now, and actually Miss Al Simpson, who's one of the top sellers on Super Rare, it's kind of the brainchild of her and I, and she's putting together a poster and a massive collaborative piece as well that's from a piece from all of us. But once we've got a little bit of promo material, you'll see it everywhere. At the moment, it's just a hashtag, so hashtag Mothers of Ethereum. But yeah, we'll start spreading the word far and wide sort of in the next week, I'd say.
Great. It sounds
fantastic. I do love seeing those stories popping up on Twitter of people saying, you know, I've paid my rent this week, I've paid my bills this week. It's all thanks to NFTs and crypto art. And I love that. This is I love the stories behind all this and what I find blockchain technology so empowering for people. If you take the time to figure it out and you find people who are aligned with yourself, like you're doing with the Mothers of Ethereum and the Women of Crypto Art and like the Australian Crypto Artist Discord and all these kind of things that you can jump into, find people who are sharing similar mindsets and goals. And very quickly you can find yourself on a path that you might not have expected even existed, but can be really beneficial, you know, financially and spiritually and community-wise. It's just brilliant.
The path you weren't expecting, the story of crypto art, in a nutshell, really. So, you know, because I'm certainly not where I thought I would be when I started at all. So, you know, I've gone on a completely different, like, track, I guess. So, but yeah, very interesting. And I'm really happy to hear people's stories too, as long as they're like, my new Mercedes, look at my new BMW I just bought. It's like, that's not what I'm here for. Like, I don't want to see you flexing. You know, there's something, you know, I think humility is kind of like overrated at times, but there's something to be said for it. Like, yeah, I don't need to see you flexing your stuff on Twitter, you know. Ugh.
I don't know if we'll ever get away from that, but yeah, I agree with you.
No, probably not. It's just human nature, isn't it? So.
It's part of it. I think it comes with the terrain in crypto, definitely.
Yeah.
The new Lambo, the new Rolex, the trip to Dubai. I think it's like bingo, isn't it? Crypto bingo.
Yeah. Is this where I should tell you guys that I got a new truck this week?
Oh, cool.
Sorry, what was that?
No,
you bought a new truck?
Oh, you're only kidding. Okay. Yeah. So,
yeah, fourth perspective is saying it's such a bizarre experience to find something new and then find success and monetary success through it after having such a hard time in the IRL art scene. 16 years as a musician, and I've made more this month doing this than all that time over 16 years. It's bizarre.
Yeah.
I think, in some way everyone can relate in this field, can't we?
I'm hearing that story.
I mean,
and how can you discount that? And I'm the same. I had my biggest sale of my art career last week, despite having done, you know, some humongous monstrosities of paintings and working for some government jobs and some royal family jobs. Like it was a 10-second animation that has been my biggest success point.
Oh, yeah.
So it's really hard to argue with.
Oh, yeah.
It's definitely changing the rules a bit.
Like, yeah, I'm still coming to grasp with the fact that I'm kind of doing okay. I think after like 30 plus years of being an IRL artist and, you know, living in poverty, like I always say, you know, you haven't lived until you've had scurvy from malnutrition, at least once. But after, which I did actually at one point, but because I was so poor, but I was more interested in like actually making, like buying paints or whatever. But so I was just sort of getting by. You know, after all those years, I got scurvy. So yeah, I got scurvy from lack of vitamin C at one point. But yeah, after the point is that after 30 plus years of being an IRL artist and just thinking it's actually never going to thinking, I hope it's going to happen, but that's sort of like having this background voice going, but it's probably never going to happen, like at this point, you know, like it's very, very unlikely. I'm still like, I haven't even processed it, to be honest. I'm kind of like, has it happened? Like maybe it's happening. I can't quite grasp it. It's just been, it's kind of like turned my life upside down completely. And who knows what the next year is going to bring? We just don't know. So,
yeah, I think it'll be big the next year. I think you know, more mainstream adoption and also just really people experimenting with, you know, licensing rights built into NFTs, royalty rates built into NFTs, real life artwork as part of the NFT being sent to you, potentially even experiences as part of the NFT. You know, like buy this piece of art and then come on this journey. Could be something once COVID's kind of we've figured out how to travel and things like that. But you never know. You know, these are the kinds of you're only limited by your creativity with this stuff, right?
Yeah, there's a million ideas to explore yet. I mean, there was that NFT that was released, I think, on Block Party maybe a couple of weeks ago. That was supposed to. It sounded better than it was, but it was supposed to be the world's first NFT perfume. But I think it was actually, I'm like, maybe we can smell. I think that's going to happen. We'll be able to smell smells like in the near future. somebody will work out the technology. But it wasn't that exciting in this instance. It was kind of like they'd kind of done some kind of artwork from the sequencing of the components of the fragrance rather than it having an actual smell, you know. But then, like, there's a zillion ideas you could do. So, you know, it's kind of unlimited at the moment. And that's what's exciting, is that because it is early days, it's like a lot of things that haven't been done. And there's so many things you could do, like welcome to the future, you know?
Yeah.
Hey, I'm just going to cycle through some of the artwork while we're talking as well, just so that we can see some of the other pieces. I'm just going to bow out
now, guys, if that's all right, because my kids will be up.
Thank you for joining us. That's so awesome.
Okay, sure.
I
Thanks,
really
Jake.
appreciate it, because I know it was so
early. Nice to talk to you both.
Go and have a coffee.
Yeah, thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.
Oh, that was lovely. Yeah, nice.
Okay, so this one was, I think, December last year. And this was an instance of me, when I mentioned earlier about buyers giving you great ideas, that I mentioned that I was doing this Bowie piece to one of my collectors, and he said, I'm really interested in that, but how about, and I'm like, oh God, here we go, an idea from a collector. This is probably going to be terrible. He said, how about you, and then I'm going to have to kind of get out of it somehow. He said, how about you do like a morph piece where it's morphing from one Bowie to another? Like, could you do Thin White Duke to Ziggy? And I was like, actually, you know what? I think I do know how to do that, so I'm going to give it a try. And it worked out great. But this was also my first sale, I think, for 0.5 or 0.6, which was like a really big step up for me at that time. It was became, it went from being a piece I was just going to release as an addition to being essentially a commission. And it was a really fun instance of somebody giving you, like, seeing something in your work that you could do that you never would have thought of. And then it works out great. So, I mean, this is like one of my all-time favorite things that I've done. And hopefully
I love the morph pieces.
It kind of started this thing with the morphs, which I think are going to become a thing. Like, I'm kind of planning to do more in the future. So that's why that one was significant for a couple of different reasons. What else have we got?
What else have we got? We've got Tori, who's just said that's a really cool piece. So thanks for joining us, Tori.
Oh, thank you.
Yep.
Hi, Tori.
And Fourth Perspective is wondering about some of the weirder cryptocurrency. I don't know if we'll go into that, but we might do that a bit later.
I've got a lot of opinions on royalties and the different platform services and whatnot, but, you know, that's like its whole separate kind of group discussion for a podcast, I think.
Yeah. So next we have Saint Hendrix. Now this is another one of yours I saw. I think it was the first time I'd seen something of yours that wasn't on OpenSea. Yep. Was this on No, not Super Rare. This was on, was it Super Rare?
Well, I had it on Rarible to start with, and then I absconded from Rarible because I just decided that, like, in a nutshell, that I wasn't really happy with how royalties were going to pan out there, and there was like a better way to do it, being strategic, as I've already mentioned. So I left Rarible and it was also a time when OpenSea were kind of like doing some really great marketing things, and I thought, all right, we're going to make storefronts free and we're going to do something else. Oh, it was Mint on Demand, which was kind of a new thing. And they were trying to attract people to the platform. And I was like, this sounds great. I want to go do this. So I started the store, and then Rarible had that contract purge at some point in February, I think, where they just like literally deleted everybody's work that was minted before X date, and then they wanted you to put it up again. And I thought, no, screw that. Like, I'm done with them. So I had it on Rarible, and then I meant to transfer it to OpenSea, but I thought, hang on, I'm going to keep this one back. So what I ended up doing with the second edition was I made it my debut on Foundation when I joined Foundation, and that the collector Aito bought it. I think that's how you pronounce his name, Aito, and he has it's kind of become known for like being the egg, the mysterious egg.
Yeah.
So he was kind of running around Foundation and like buying a lot of people's work and putting together this good collection. And he's actually just launched yesterday, I think, this new platform, which is kind of a bit like Showtime, I guess.
Yep.
And it's kind of like a lot of the features seem remarkably similar to Foundation. I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying I see a lot of similarities with the font. Like, what is going on there? So I've had kind of ideas about where this person might have appeared from. But yeah, he kind of stays DL. He bought this piece off Foundation, so it was my debut piece on Foundation. So yeah, that's why it was significant. So I think he's putting together he's being like a really great supporter of artists. Yeah.
Yeah, I know the other day he went on a massive shopping spree a very strategic shopping spree, I reckon, just prior to launching the This Is Ito platform. But I mean, he wasn't just going out and buying big name artists. There was, I think, a lot of the artists from the NFT Hype Squad, who are an awesome team. Shout out to them. He was buying a lot of their work the other day, as well as other kind of lesser known artists. There's one guy I came across who, just by pure accident, he had this story about he used to play professional sport and then had an injury, and then COVID's kind of really hit him hard. And he just, during lockdown, taught himself 3D and graphic design and started minting pieces. And I think Ito bought one of his pieces, and he was just over the moon. He's like, oh my God, this is like brilliant. And I think there's so much to be said for a collector supporting artists in that way, especially during these kind of slumps every now and then, as you get in crypto markets and things like that, where maybe not as many people are spending, the hype's died down. For someone to come in and say, hey, look, we still believe in what we're doing here and support artists, I think is really worthwhile.
But also it can come at exactly the right moment when you're having a personal slump or whatever, or you just need to take that next step and somebody comes along, appreciates what you're doing, and it just gives you that extra kind of motivation to kind of keep going again. But yeah, speaking of sports people, what is Tommy Wilson's excuse for working with Twisted Vacancy? Enough said. Let's move along. Was that throwing shade? Yes, it was. So
that's all right. You can throw shade. This is your platform, Zan. It's your show today. It's your show. Tori's saying that on the Ito platform, you might be able to drop your reviews on artwork, which is actually something I haven't seen on other platforms. So that's pretty cool.
That's interesting.
So potentially almost like a social media, rating kind of scale potentially.
Okay. I'm not really sure what it's all about yet. So
all right. Well, let's move on to, we have another morph piece, and this is one that I am so dirty that I missed out on. Personally,
really?
I really wanted this, and then I think I messaged you because you were saying you were bringing out more in the Marilyn Morph series, and I was thinking, oh, he's done 2, and then the morph piece between the 2. So I'm going to wait for the second one and then get them, and it never happened. And so I think
we'll see. That's
but I love this piece. I love this piece because it. Please talk about it. I won't say.
No. You say why you love it. So I don't hear enough of that.
The opening image, we can all do with a bit more, right? But the opening image for me is just so simplistic. It's a young Marilyn, or what was her name? Norma Jean, wasn't it?
Norma Jean Baker.
Norma Jean Baker. It's a young woman who is innocent and everything. And this picture just says so much, because when you look at that transformation of what she became, the icon Marilyn, and in just a few frames, you've gone from, the seaside young girl at the beach having her photo taken to something a lot more for everybody. Trying to please everybody, being something for everyone. The sex symbol, the bombshell. Yeah, I love this piece. I really do.
It may end candy coloured and very bright and happy, but the idea is actually the opposite. It's actually quite gothic in a way. I think I talk about it on Known Origin. The reason why this piece was significant is because that was my debut on Known Origin. Like, after long negotiations with Known Origin and ending up on the no pile, which a lot of people don't know, is that I was put on the no pile by Known Origin and I wouldn't accept it. So I had quite a lot of negotiation with them, and finally was enabled on the site in February. So I really tied myself. By that point, they'd kind of stressed me out a bit. So I was really tied myself in knots over this debut collection. Like, I wanted it to be exactly right, and I was being really strategic and trying to figure out if it was going to work or not, and it could fail, and that would be devastating. And so I spent. I'd already made quite a few pieces of work for Known Origin. before I settled on this. And I made a Marilyn originally and then decided no, and then I made some Marlenes. I was like, no. And then I sort of came up with this idea. Because I had so much time to spend on it, all of a sudden, zing, it needs to be a collection. And that's one of the great things that I do love about Nine Origin, is that you can organise things into collections, so you can release a collection. But yeah, this was the debut for Nine Origin. It was a 3-piece Marilyn Morph collection debut, and like I was just absolutely stoked when it sold out after 3 or 4 days. Like I was so surprised, and I was like, all that worry for nothing. Like I just really tied myself in knots about it. But the whole idea of the sort of transformation has always really been an area of interest for me. Like kind of like drawing over things and changing things. And in the early 90s, there was this whole sort of post-human movement as well. There was a book called Post-Human, and it was the first art book that explored artists who were looking at like extreme plastic surgery and other kind of transformations, and like AI and robots and that sort of thing. And again, that's always kind of been a really big area of interest to me. So to do a transformation of a person from one thing to another has always been something that's interested me, and it just seemed logical to do it with Marilyn because she transformed herself so dramatically. And as I say in the blurb, a lot of people don't know how many plastic surgery procedures she actually had, and people won't accept it either. Like they're just so you could mention other people's names that people won't accept that they're just sort of human, and you know they do certain things to get ahead. But she definitely transformed herself completely over a number of years to end up as the person that we, you know, the iconic Marilyn that we know today. But yeah,
she was kind of the Nicki Minaj of her era, wasn't she?
Well, Nicki Minaj is just one of them. But yeah, so I think there's more dramatic.
I think it's the other way around, absolutely. But it's that idea, and I think, like you say, it's funny when someone enters into legend, isn't it, and enters into myth, that the narrative, the fictional narrative, almost takes over the real narrative, and it's the one that we're more comfortable with, and then we kind of use that as the benchmark for other people. You know, the kind like the Pamela Andersons and the people who kind of followed on from Marilyn Monroe to fit into that mold, and yet that person wasn't even that. You know what I mean? Like they had to.
Not now. You look back at it and you just think, what was the big deal? Like you look at Pamela Anderson now and you think that's like nothing really compared to now. But yeah, Pamela Anderson was definitely like of that moment of the whole post-human movement, like that kind of moment in the early 90s when it was considered to be like really kind of quite extreme to get a boob job or whatever. But yeah, I mean, the other thing this is about is mental illness. Like a lot of my pieces are kind of like delve into the psychology of celebrity. It's just something that really interests me. Like I really like to research when I'm doing somebody, read as much as I possibly can on them. And I already had an idea. I kind of wanted it to portray that, but it was really interesting kind of going over it and delving deeper into it. So yeah, that's why that one was significant to me.
And so I'm right in thinking that was the first, you minted one still piece, which was this one. And then the second still piece was the full pink.
So there was the morph, and then I sort of split it into two, which were the stills. So yeah, and I never would have thought of really doing that unless I'd had some time on my hands to really think about it. So
and then you kind of morphed in between as a third separate piece that actually was collected by a separate party. It wasn't like the morph went to the collectors of the first two pieces. There were three individuals.
Yeah, and so what I wanted to do was, well, actually the two stills came from the morph. It's not like I designed the two still pieces and then made the morph. Like it was designed as the morph and then split off. So it was kind of like a reverse process. But yeah, what else have we got?
Okay,
some of your pieces, your early pieces that you collected.
Okay. Well, this was the first one I bought because when I was a child, my first two albums were NWA Straight Outta Compton and Elvis Presley Aloha from Hawaii via satellite 1969.
Yes, I've still got it.
Like that.
I just found it.
What a freaking great album.
Yeah.
So my parents...
the original LP.
Yeah. Well, my parents had a Betamax, not a VHS. And so... the only movies we had were Grease, That's the Way It Is, or The Way It Is by Elvis Presley, which was like I don't know if you've seen that movie, The Way It Is, but it was a really cool look behind one of Elvis's last shows, like towards the end of his life, one of his Vegas shows, and it was kind of like going behind the scenes of rehearsals, interviews with him and the band. Brilliant thing. And I must have watched that 30 times. And I started as a child collecting Elvis Presley vinyls, and at birthday parties I'd dress up as Elvis and get my mates to be the backing band, and we'd grab my brother's guitar and shake the leg and do all the karaoke and stuff. So
Elvis was really like one of those men that one of those figures that men of my father's generation really aspired to and identified with. Like, they thought that was the hottest thing, if you were like anything like Elvis, you were, going to be a real ladies' man or whatever. It was just a sort of thing that they aspired to. But I mean, I love this, like, I don't know, there's something so aesthetically pleasing about it. But the thing that we might get to see, like my latest piece, which I'm releasing this week, but that's just made me realize like how much of my work is about food. Like, I'm kind of developing this, I don't know what that says, but I'm kind of developing this thing where it's celebrity and food. So this was
celebrity
like
and food.
Probably the earliest one I did, but it did have a clear concept in that it was about Elvis's chef. And I remember in the 90s, she released a cookbook of all Elvis's, I mean, she's done heaps of interviews, so you can just go on YouTube now. But back then it wasn't that accessible. Like, we're talking pre-internet days. So books were more exciting. And she issued this book, and I saw it at a bookstore where it was all about Elvis's favourite recipes, like fool's gold. If you don't know what that is, look it up. You'll be disgusted. And what else did he like? Fried bacon. No, sorry.
Peanut butter, wasn't it? Fried peanut butter and banana sandwiches.
So so this piece was like basically about like junk food and Elvis, because he's kind of become as famous for his disgusting diet as he was for everything else in a way. But I just wanted to have like a lot of fun with this.
This is the one that first caught my eye on OpenSea. This was the one. So for anyone who's familiar with the platform OpenSea, you'll know that it's a complete mess visually. That you kind of open it up and there's just stuff everywhere, and then there was this stuff in the middle of it, and I was like, oh, hang on, this looks legitimate in amongst all this other stuff that really didn't look legitimate, which kind of goes back to what yourself and Jen were saying earlier about, it's sometimes fairly easy to pick who's here for the long haul, who's actually good, rather than who's hyping things. But this was the one that caught my eye, plus it was Elvis, and I just thought,
even when you click the tab,
when you when you do the what?
Even when you click the art tab at the top, along the top.
Yes.
Like, okay, so it's still a mess. Oh, well, that's good to know. I mean, OpenSea. There's a lot of great things about it, but
it's fun. I mean, I think once you get over the mess of it, actually, it's like going into the old record store and leafing through, the 500 crappy 80s vinyls to find that one treasure where you're like, ooh, yeah, this was worth it, And I've found some really cool stuff out on OpenSea. So anyone looking to buy crypto art, definitely, that's a platform you have to check out.
That poll I ran last week shows that, like, by far people preference OpenSea to buy pieces. So that was interesting. Like, I guess it's kind of logical, given that they are hands down the biggest retailer of NFTs in the world. Maybe not art NFTs, but generally NFTs. So I guess that did make
plus
sense.
they're an aggregator, so everything that is on the other platforms is also on OpenSea, like a Spotify, for instance, whereas a lot of the other platforms are exclusive to just what's on their platform. So, and
they've got a lot of new things they're integrating, apart from Tezos, which is coming at some point, but the list of things they released this morning that they're integrating is like, wow, like they're really working hard. They're really working hard. They've got like their eye on the future, and they're really strategizing. So, I mean, that impresses me. So there's a lot of great things about OpenSea, but they do really need to streamline their process in the way that Rarible streamlined. Like, a child could actually mint on Rarible and find it easy, but on OpenSea, it's like a bit more of a process. Like, they don't have even a facility for minting editions unless you know how to do it. So there's like a secret little bit of code that you need. And then when you get to bundles and things, it just gets messy. We won't go into that right now. So this is one of yours that was from OpenSea, right?
I believe it is. Yes, this is. I've got.
Yeah.
These are my 3 Marilyns actually that I've got on the wall. I do have a triptych of Marilyns, which is really nice.
Nice. Yeah, thank you.
No. Look, I love the colors. I love the palettes. I love how you've taken one person and given her so many moods and phases, and kind of says so much. It's really cool.
I've got one more Marilyn to release, and that's it. So it's got a lot of hand drawing, and that's one thing I meant to say when we had Jen on, is that how much working with her actually inspired me as far as going back to drawing. Like, I've always been a drawer. As a kid, like, that was like, I know Ferocious talks about this a lot, that he'd sort of go off in the corner and draw in his drawing books. I always had my drawing book. I was always filling drawing books. Wherever we were, if mum was getting her nails done or I was at a convention with my grandparents, you would find me at a table somewhere drawing in my drawing book. And the great thing about working with Jen is I got my drawing on completely. Like, she's amazing. And she's fast. Like, she's such a fast worker that I'm like, I really need to pick up my pace. But also it inspired me to really go back to drawing. And so the last Marilyn that I'll be releasing at some point, probably next month, like, all of the elements in it are hand drawn. So that's kind of like an influence that she's had on me from collaborating with her. And I'm really looking forward to the future of doing like more drawing or just completely drawn pieces. So yeah, so those are both from Known Origin. And I don't know, like, I just love doing them. Like, I love doing collage work. Like, I just haven't had a lot of time to make new work this month, like no new work. So I was actually getting withdrawals from making collage. So I did like a new piece on the weekend for the first time in weeks. But it's so much fun. Like, I pull these sort of elements from all of my different collections that I've put together over the decades. And I just use, like, if you go in and look, there's like a lot of little Easter eggs and things. I think you're probably the only person that's noticed that. Like, I put these little secret things in that most people wouldn't notice at first. And I'm like, I wonder if anybody's going to pull me up on that. But if you go in and look, there might be like little clippings and things from like random drawings or paintings that I did like in the 90s, 2000s, even the 80s. You're never going to know that unless you ask me, but I'm just trying to demonstrate how random it is that I find all these little different bits and pieces and put them in, and it's really I find it really relaxing and enjoyable, so I'm glad that people enjoy them too. Yeah, no, that's really, I love exploring these. You can just see I'm just finding new things even now that you're kind of like, oh, I didn't notice that before, and it's very fun. I always think there's never enough in them. Like, I want more. So, you know. So I'm always like, it's going to make twice as much in it. Speaking of the last piece, this is the one you've just created? Yeah, I think it's done. I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's pretty much done. It's the Cooper Flesh, it's called. And it's got like lots of bits of meat and lots of lady parts. So if you're a vegetarian or a feminist or both, this is probably not for you. But I kind of try and think about them after. A lot of sausage. Exactly. So I try and think about them as meatballs. I don't really think about them as I'm making them. I think about it like when I have to write up what inspired me is when I really have to do a deep delve and try and figure out what it was that inspired me to do this. Like, sometimes it will start as like I've got the idea to do one thing and it ends up completely different. This wasn't the idea that I had for Gary Cooper, but this is how it ended up. Lots of sausages. So I was kind of thinking about, like, I used to read like a lot of feminist and gender lit in the 90s, and it's always been like a real area of interest for me. Like, I'm a bit of a Camille Paglia fan, and she used to talk about the male gaze a lot. And I think that one of the pivotal moments in Gary Cooper's career, and this also is where Marlene Dietrich comes in, is the movie Morocco in 1930, with that famous scene where she comes out on stage dressed in a tuxedo and the crowd boos. And then she kind of does this performance where she proceeds to seduce both a woman in the audience and a man in. But I think it was one of the earliest instances in film where, okay, it was just like the narrative of the movie. It was the script. But she actually turned like the female gaze to a male for the first time, whereas obviously traditionally with male stars, they're always completely in control of the situation. So it was a really interesting moment, which is in cinematic history, which has become completely iconic. Like most people think of Marlene Dietrich, they think of her in that tuxedo and the top hat. And then if they know more, they know that scene in the movie where she's seducing, Gary Cooper with her performance dressed as a man. So that was kind of like, I realized that was kind of the idea behind this piece. So yeah, got a lot of meat in it. So he was also a bit of I would say a ladies' man. Yeah. Like actually Wikipedia has like a lot, like actually literally has a list of like all his lovers and wives and girlfriends. And it's a damn long list. So he was a bit of a, I wouldn't say a womanizer, like he was a fairly kind of cultured person. Like he really had like a great interest and a lot of love for modern art, which is kind of unusual. Okay. So he was a fairly cultured person, but he loved hunting, but he also really loved modern art, and he was a big modern art collector. So he was a relatively sophisticated person, but very dual. Like he also loved like sports, and was an actual genuine cowboy. Like he started out as a cowboy. He was working as a cowboy before he came to Hollywood, which is not what he was known for. Like he was later on known more for these sort of sophisticated roles. But he was an actual cowboy. Interesting character. So that was the inspiration behind that, and I should be minting it sometime in the next couple of days. Not really sure where or what I'm going to do, because as we've talked about, like, everything's changing so fast in the scene, and like the things with platforms have changed. Normally I would have put it on OpenSea. I'm rethinking that now, so we'll just see what happens.
Cool. Well, is there anything else you wanted to chat about now that we've done the full exhibition? Is there any other topics that you think would be worth talking about? Royalties or...
there's a lot of topics that are worth talking about, but we should probably call it quits. I mean, I think, the royalty topic and the contract cross-platforming topic is a really interesting one that needs to be talked about. I think I did a tweet last week that said, basically, if we can't talk about these things without people getting shitty, what is the point? Yeah. Because it's probably a nice note to end on, is that the whole idea of decentralization is also a decentralization of ideas. So not only should people be able to do what they want and run their finances as they want, they should be able to discuss, their ideas as they want. Like a lot of people talk about freedom of speech. But people are sort of getting gatekeepy about that now as well. It's like, oh, you can't talk. Heaven forfend if you say anything about people that isn't like a glowing review. There's no reason not to give them a glowing review, but you can't say anything that's like even perceived vaguely as negative. And let's just not hope that it goes that way. Like people should be able to talk about these things. The whole royalty issue is something that wasn't even a thing until like a couple of months ago, when people sort of suddenly realised it was a problem. But, that would be a really good topic to have like a group podcast about.
Well, let's organise that. I'd be happy to host that and do that. Yeah. I think it's because I think there's not a lot of easy to access information around there, and a lot of it would come from artists' experience.
Well, there's a reason for that. Yeah, there's a reason for that. It's like they don't really want you to talk about it or know about it. That's the whole thing. And even like,
but to me, that was kind of the point of what But that was the point of the technology, was that it actually enabled ongoing revenue streams, and and
we've got to make sure it works for us as creatives. We have to. Like, this is not the moment to let things, run through your fingers. Like, this is the moment to actually grab it and harness it. And
that's that's one thing I do want to. Yeah, I do want to mention, like, if anyone's watching this now or on the replay, like, if you are interested, just jump in. There's no one at this point saying you can't. And that's the whole point of this, is that it is decentralized. You can find your way in this. You can find a spot that suits you, people you get on with, and a niche that lights you up. So I think just get involved, participate. It's not scary. It is overwhelming and it is time consuming. So, beware of that. But jump in. It's the opportunities far outweigh the negatives for me in this space. Oh, absolutely. I mean, just the fact that, look, what we've created in a matter of weeks, from me seeing a Elvis Presley picture on OpenSea to we're now linking up with people around the world and building galleries and discussing things.
Absolutely love
It's been
it. I've
brilliant.
met so many amazing people. So both collectors and other creators, it's been absolutely awesome. It's like given me a whole new lease of life. Like this, if you had told me in 2019 that this would be what was happening now, I never would have believed you at all. I would have been like, yeah,
No.
right, pull the other one. So me selling art full time, I don't think so. So yeah, it's been great. But thank you for doing this podcast. It's been really great to be able to talk a bit about what I do. I really appreciate your support as a collector. I think you've got like a really great eye, and you're putting together an awesome collection.
Oh,
I'm not
thank you,
just
Zam.
saying that
Thank
because
you
I'm
very much.
biased. I'm not saying that because I'm biased. But yeah,
You can come back.
So-
You can come back next time. But no, thank you so
thank
much.
you.
Look, it's new to me as well. Like if you told me in 2019 or even December 2020, oh, you'll be collecting art in 2021, you'd be like, yeah, no, I'm not an art collector. But
I don't think so.
there is a way for you for these things to happen now because the barriers are down, and that's what I love. And I think what I've loved about today, especially, and why I wanted to put this together, is because Twitter moves so fast, crypto moves so fast, and there's a lot of hype, and there's not a lot of time to really find out the story behind things, and just to sit with the art. Sometimes, we're so focused on the next piece, the next trend, the next hype, and can I get a good deal? Can I flip this? Can I do that? Yeah. And it's so nice just to literally wander around in this virtual space, just looking at the colors, looking at the details, and talking about where they came from. And I know we've had some comments, like Jodie was saying she remembers back in the day, and I know Jodie personally, but she used to develop her own photos, so she's loving the idea of you collecting cardboard boxes and building collage out of that. And all of us around this kind of age remember those days where you would cut out magazines. I had a whole wall in my bedroom from magazine cutouts, just musicians and film stars and video games and sports and all sorts of stuff. Just built this entire wall collage with blue tack and magazines and scissors. And it was awesome.
Now we're bringing it into the future and kind of like reapplying it to a culture that's like so of the moment that, again, it's relevant. I mean, I don't know. It's so interesting to me, like what's happening. It's kind of mind-boggling and fascinating, and there's so many aspects to it. Yeah, just absolutely amazing. So I'm looking forward to the future for the first time in a long time.
Yeah, cool. Well, just before I go, I'm just going to chuck up your Twitter handle and my one again. So if anyone wants to, get in touch or do anything like that, please feel free. Just go to a place where you can actually read it. There we go. So that's yours, is at ZAM Artist on Twitter. And I am at EditorOne.
I'd like some hate mail for a change. Somebody send me some hate mail.
Someone who's not going to tell you you're brilliant. Jim's asking, are you going to keep these talks on YouTube? Yes, they will be. Yes, absolutely. I think YouTube automatically will save the videos, and I'd love to build up a library of these.
Yeah. Another first. So this is the debut. So,
absolutely. Yeah. And Fourth Perspective says crypto is human overall. He finds it's human. And I think that's a really interesting thing to bear in mind, is it really does bring people together.
Speak for yourself, technology. Perspective. Speak for yourself.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Zam. I really appreciate your time. Hey, I really appreciate your time.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It was awesome. That was just part of the story, by the way. Just part of the
Absolutely.
story.
There's always more. So please hit up Zam on Twitter and check out his work on all the platforms. I'll link to it in the video. In the comments, I'll put links to all the work and the various platforms and where you can buy it, check it out, browse it, and all the rest.
Most of them. Yeah. Otherwise, go to Linktree on my profile and it's all there. So, all right. Thanks so much, Alex. Signing off.
Signing off. Right. Let's do it again sometime soon.
All right. I'll speak to you later.